You're listening to the Kingdom Project Podcast. These are discussions on biblical theology and interpretation. The emphasis is on context and grace. The goal is to promote biblical literacy by displacing and debunking most modern interpretations. The challenge is to engage in healthy conversation that may stretch but sharpen iron. This is the Kingdom Project, and I'm your host, Marcus Hall. Hey everybody, what's going on? So good morning, good afternoon, good night, good middle of the night. I don't know where you're at, what you're doing. So hope everything is well. I'm doing good. It's been hot, really, really hot. Those of you that live around where I live and you know me and you listen to this, you know what I'm talking about. Heat indexes, 106 today, and the day before we had a bad storm Thursday night. Just with really, really strong winds, almost 70 mile per hour winds, and it wiped out a lot of people's power. Thankfully, that was not the case at our house. I told my wife right before, I was like, if the power goes out, we're going to hotel. Thankfully, it didn't go out, though. My dad's did. He lives just like a mile down the road. It went out Thursday night, 7 o'clock or so, and it just got back on. It's been over 48 hours, and he roughed it out. The old the old man, and my mom and the two dogs, they just stuck around at the house and sweated it out. So kudos to them. I said I could not do it. You are a stronger man than I. So Facebook group discussion page is now on the Kingdom Project podcast page on there. So not a lot of people in there yet. That's okay. Humble beginnings are good, right? But I'm putting that in there for people's ideas on what they want to hear maybe, or ask questions, or even comment, or get in the conversation about an episode. So encourage you to do that and subscribe and like, and this is this whole thing that I'm trying to figure out Patreon and Patreon and stuff like that, in case people want to give money and everything. But the best thing that you could do to support this podcast is to rate, subscribe, leave a rating and a review, and just share it. If there's your favorite episode or the most thought-provoking one or whatever, share it on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Just share it to get it out there. That's the best thing that you could do, and that's the thing I would be the most thankful for, really, is to have that happen. So, other than that, thanks for listening. And so let's talk about hedges of protection. Everybody knows this, right? Everybody knows this is not just a charismatic thing. It's just common. Praying a hedge of protection. Where does it come from in the Bible? And is it biblical? Yeah. You can say it's biblical. Absolutely. But along with, praying for people, traveling mercies, and I'm not making fun of that. I'm just saying, it's just those common things that we hear and we've all prayed, I'm sure. Traveling mercies, a hedge of protection around this person or this family, or hedge of protection around the church during the service so Satan can't come in and all that stuff. So, just going to look. It's only in two places in the Bible. and those are in the Old Testament. And the first one is in Job, actually, the book of Job, and it's interesting to to read it. So the first it comes from Job 1 verse 10. Satan. Well, let's see. This is Satan talking. The Satan, the adversary, to the Lord. Actually, verse 9, he says, does Job fear God for no reason? And then 10 says, have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. All right, so there's that text. And, the first thing I'll mention is that sometimes this is used as a spiritual warfare tactic when it comes to prayer. It's not mentioned here as a spiritual warfare tactic at all. It's just sort of funny to me. Scrolling through my notes here. Hold on. This is simply. It doesn't even really say. He says, "Have you not put a hedge around him?" He goes on to say, "But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." And the Lord said to the Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand." So that's all we get, is this hedge thing there. So God never confirms, nor does he deny if there's a hedge around him protecting him. I think it's more of it's part of just the vernacular that's being used, and so that's interesting to me. And then it's just more of this linguistic. How do you say that word? Way of saying that you protect him, and God may very well have been protecting him, but I don't even think Job would have even known that God was protecting him at this time. This was actually the first account, Old Testament book that we have, and that's why it's really messes up some people's understanding, because it's sort of just tucked in there within the Old Testament. This should have been, you should have a couple of parts of Genesis, like the first few chapters, and then stick Job in there, and then go to the rest of Genesis. We just don't really know what's going on. But he was blameless and upright. He feared God, and he turned away from evil. So he would have been considered righteous. So was God protecting him there with a hedge? You really can't say. We don't know. We could go ahead and just look up this in another. Just always so unprepared, Marcus. So unprepared. All right, the edge. That's verse 10. Let's see what's going on here in the Blue Letter Bible. When it says a hedge or a fence up or about. That's it. So the adversary, the Satan here, is saying, have you put a fence around him? God neither confirms or denies that, as I said. Okay, Hosea 2 is the other place that you will find this, and it's actually more a hedge of thorns. And it's in chapter 2, verse 6. And it says, "Therefore I will hedge up her way with thorns, and I will build a wall against her so that she cannot find her paths." So in order to understand the context of what's going on in here, what's funny is this is not a hedge of protection. Actually, this is about God actually putting a hedge of thorns around her, Israel, and because of their unfaithfulness and their being adulterous nation, and He's going to put this around them to bind them up, to make them realize the sin that they're in, to come back to Him. It's very interesting, actually. So, praying a hedge around someone may seem like it's this nice prayer, this noble endeavor, or whatever. The intent, is to petition the Lord to protect the target from all things that are, demonic, satanic, or whatever, to seek this divine protection. And it's just, it's, shrubbery, though. It's what it is. It's landscaping, and it's divine landscaping. It's a protective, transcendent gardening that comes from God around the individual. It's always temporary because in its effectiveness, because since one has to keep praying the hedge prayer over and over again, it's I don't know. That's just sort of interesting to me. So if you noticed, all I did was just read those two texts, and then and explained a little bit, and that's all. But I read them in context, and so it's not even like you have to have a in-depth exegetical approach to some of these things. When they're in their full context, they're not prescribing praying for a hedge around somebody. In the case of Hosea, it's not even a protective blessing or a divine protection, but it's a divine judgment from God on His people for their adulterous ways, because they have been pursuing other gods before Him. And then in the case of Job, like I said, the mention of this hedge is just linguistic. There's the word, finally rose out of my tongue. Linguistic imagery that describe God's protection and pointed to Him, being a father of someone who believed in Him and feared Him, because and that's what is just going on there. So you've got a phrase hedge, right, around somebody in those two cases, and they're just sort of misunderstood or just taken out of context. And then now we just have this way of praying for people, and it doesn't really make sense. But here's the thing: is it wrong? Like, no, it's not wrong. I think maybe we should just drop the phrase altogether and just pray for protection. Hey, let's just in whatever way, but because it's not even the question of is it wrong, but like, does it do any good? There's no harm in it, I don't think, at all. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to bring these, bring it to light there, show it in context, and just put it out there just that way, like that. So, hedges of protection, what if your greatest weakness is, as a Tim Hawkins, I don't know much about him, but I heard that joke, something like, what if your greatest weakness is landscaping? Because the devil's supposed to know your greatest weakness or something. He's going to just go in there and just... So I would say that if we're going to use prayers for hedge of protection in the way that we do, why aren't we just praying that hedge and the thorns, the hedge of thorns from like Hosea? Why don't we just pray that around the devil? So keep him busy in there doing yard work for a while, and then maybe maybe at some point he'll get out. I don't know. Of course, if you listen to my other episodes, you know how I feel about that topic of the Satan. So, yeah, there you go, man. Hedges of protection, sort of debunked, but at least giving you a clear insight where that comes from and what's going on. Okay, there you have it. Just a little short context episode there. So check us out on Facebook, subscribe, like, please share, and questions, comments, disagreements, whatever. Shoot me an email at thekingdomprojectpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, be a mustard seed, be leaven, and thank you for listening.